Alpha.
And welcome to the very last live stream of our Black Friday sessions. We are here with, they're flipping laughing at me. We are here with Masson and Fatima and Saraz from TTL Photography. Tonight we are going to be talking about specifically stuff related to wedding photography. And it's all hand in hand with the gear that's actually on the Black Friday deals. So the Black Friday deals themselves, there's savings up to 12,500 Rand on glass and also on the bodies. So go check them out with your retailer. I'm not going to mention them now because there's a massive list and it's a really, really aggressive promotion that's actually running. So yeah, I would advise you to take advantage of that.
Hi everybody,
guys.
welcome. We are so thrilled to have you guys here.
How's it, guys?
Thanks so much for joining, guys. So I'll start. So my name is Matt Masson. I specialize in weddings and commercial photography. I'm going to be focusing on weddings today primarily and portraits. And I shoot with the A7 III, the A7R4, mainly for my wedding photography stuff. So yeah.
I am Fatima and this is Siraz. We are TTL Photography. We specialize in high-end Indian weddings in Durban and now all around South Africa. And we mainly use our A9 and A9 II.
That's it. My favorite setup is with the G-Master lenses. It's something we will be discussing during the talk as well. So stay tuned, guys.
Yeah. So actually to kick this off, especially the Q&A session, I already have prepared some questions. So I'm going to ask a huge question. They'll answer it and then we'll go into some presentations that they've prepared for us. So the first question, directed to no one in particular, what makes Sony mirrorless 5 steps ahead in the game for you, wedding related, obviously?
I think we should pass this to
Yes,
Siraz,
Siraz.
'cause he knows
Oh,
everything.
thanks, guys.
He knows everything. He knows everything. So.
Now that you know the truth about me, I can ignore them, right? So I think 5 big things when it comes to Sony mirrorless is firstly innovation. Sony's been at it for over 7 years. And in terms of the form factor, in terms of dynamic range, in terms of autofocus, there's just a host of things that make Sony, I wouldn't say 5 steps, I would say quite a lot more steps ahead of any other manufacturer. Yeah, if you look at it, it's the Sony system is just that good. Eye autofocus, like I mentioned, dynamic range, the speed of the autofocus of the cameras that Sony's producing now is absolutely amazing. And you might not think you might need fast autofocus for portraits or for weddings or even commercial work, but trust me, there are situations when you need that. So
Definitely.
Okay, so we actually have one comment coming in. I'm going to say that comment. Kesnik, who was also tuned in with us yesterday,
Yes.
he's saying, now there's people talking that's in my field. I can't wait to hear tonight's session.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
No pressure.
Welcome,
Kesnik's watching. Okay, we're going to go over to the presentations. We're going to start with
Send those
Matt.
questions through.
Yeah. So, Matt, you can take it away, man.
Awesome. Hey guys, so I'm going to be focusing on 2 different cameras, the A7 III and the A7R4. They're the cameras that I use on all the work I do, literally everything. So when Sony released the A7 III, I remember watching a YouTube video and I saw on the title of the YouTube video, A7 III, the basic model. I was like, how on earth is that possible? Because it's such a good camera. It's such an insanely good all-rounder as a camera. It's great with stills and with video. Has incredibly good autofocus. And the A7 III was actually the first camera I bought when I switched across to Sony, and I've never seen autofocus like that in my life. It was ridiculous. It's like 90-something% viewfinder coverage of the actual frame. You can focus essentially anywhere with eye autofocus as well, which I've never seen before in my life as well, which is ridiculous. So great autofocus. It's very, very good in low light. I've got a couple of slides I want to show you guys as well. It's like ridiculous in low light. It's got very good dynamic range as well, excellent dynamic range, which is very important for weddings, especially if you're shooting outside in broad daylight and you need to expose, if you need to kind of like recover shadows and save highlights as well, in broad sunlight as well. So really, really powerful camera. It's also very compact, which I absolutely loved coming from DSLRs. It was literally my switch across to a mirrorless camera. It's tiny, it's so small, and it's so user-friendly. I love that I could literally customize everything about the camera to exactly what I want. That's something that I really, really love. Not just for still photography, but for video as well. I can customize all the settings of the camera to work differently for stills and video. It's great for most wedding photographers. I say most wedding photographers because it's kind of the A9 II has a lot of really high-end specs which make it suitable for a different style. I like the A7 III because it's very good for just kind of general kind of photography as well. So I use it for video, I use it for a bunch of other stuff, and I use it for portraits as well. So I'm just going to run through a few photos with you. This image here is it was one of a shot I did at the Oyster Box in Durban. I shot that at 8,000 ISO with an LED light behind the couple. It's like I would have never imagined that I could shoot at 8,000 ISO ever. So that's actually quite an easy image to make. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to try and flex and say that that's like super hectic, but it's really quite simple to make that, and the camera was able to focus on it very easily. When I say it's good in low light, I mean the camera is great at focusing in low light, which is also very important, but also obviously low light performance. So this shot was done at ISO 4000. It was 1/6 of a second shot handheld with a 50mm lens. But this is what and I used a flash for this. This is what the camera saw. There we go. This is what the camera saw without the flash. So this is what the camera was focusing on. I don't know if you can even see the bride's dress in that shot. I'm going to go back, Herman, to the previous one. That's the shot with flash, and that's the shot without flash. And that's what the camera was trying to focus on. And it managed to focus on the couple on the deck, like miles away, in pitch black. I couldn't believe it. When I got that shot, I was like, nailed it. I'm like so stoked about that. Cool. Go through to the next one, the barn. This one as well, 4000 ISO, LED only. It was one of the last shots of the night, and we didn't have much time to set up reset up a flash. We'd actually packed up, and the couple just wanted to do one more shot. And I asked them if we could do one shot by the barn. LED, I was like, I don't want to go reset up a flash, so we put an LED there. Very simple shot to make, and 4000 ISO, and I delivered that to the client, and they were super happy with it. Next shot is, I'm actually just showing off here the dynamic range of this camera. Now, this is the shot, edited. This is after I did everything I wanted with it. You can see I shot this at ISO 200. But this is the unedited version. And you can see, I'm going back to the next one, Hammer. You can see how much information I recovered. So I literally, and just jump forward there. You can see it's actually ridiculous. Like the couple is pretty much dark in that shot. And I just pulled back as much information as I wanted. And all that color, I could just add the color in. I could increase saturation, change hues. And coming from a bigger camera body, I was worried about switching to a smaller camera body because bigger means better, right? Like everyone says that.
Yeah.
But it's really not the case. And the files here were just brilliant. To the next slide there, I'm going to the vineyard. This shot as well, I'm showing you an edited and unedited version. So this is the edited version once I've done everything I want to it. And this is the unedited version of the shot. It's just like completely different. And I was able to bring back a lot of that shadow detail. We had about 15 minutes for this creative shoot at sunset. We did the creative shoot between the start, I think it was between starters and mains. It was like we had 15 minutes during the main course at the wedding to shoot these shots. We went out for 15 minutes and we got some great stuff. It was just amazing to be able to actually get that. So I'm going to jump ahead to the next shot here. This is an ISO 8000 image of the couple on the dance floor without flash. I love that. I love it, guys. I love that I don't have to use flash if I don't want to. So this couple didn't want to have like lots of flash strobe photography at their wedding day. They had, as you can see, they had sparklers and they had lots of natural lighting. So I just decided, let me just shoot this all completely natural lighting. And you can see I shot that at 2.8 as well. So I was able to get a lot of detail in the shot. I'm going to the next one. So this is actually one of my favorite experiences. I can't believe that I actually got these shots. This is one of the first weddings I've shot with the A7 III. And all of these images were shot. I was like, let me try and push the camera. Like, let's just get ridiculous with this. So I pushed the camera's ISO to 16,000. 16,000. That was 4 times the amount that I would previously shoot with my previous camera. No names mentioned.
Drop a name.
No names mentioned.
Drop a name.
16,000, and I pushed the shutter speed up to 1/500th of a second just so I could freeze action. Obviously, that's one of the main reasons people use flash when people are dancing, is to freeze that motion. But I figured, let me shoot 1/500th of a second, 16,000 ISO, and I got a whole bunch of awesome dancing shots. It was actually just ridiculous. Yeah, so that's the A7 III for me, guys. Such an amazingly good all-rounder camera. I've kind of just skimmed through this quite quickly because we have a lot to cover. I hope that's okay. It's an amazing camera right now. And Herman, I know he's going to ask me a question about which camera I'd buy, which camera I'd buy. And I'll answer that in a second. I'm going to hand over to TTL, and they're going to take it away with the A9 II.
I hope you guys are still there, because we got a lot more to feature. And now we're going to talk about a camera that's slightly better than Matt's.
Being used by photographers that are a lot better than Matt.
Yo!
We're just joking.
We're going there. We're going there. Now we can go there. I can go there. We're going there.
So we use the Sony A9 range, where Siraj uses the Sony A9 and I use the Sony A9 II. And basically, the Sony A9 II was manufactured mainly for sports photography until a wedding photographer got a hold of it. And the main thing you got to think about weddings is it's high speed, it's fast, it's demanding, and there's a lot of moments you got to be ready for to snap it, because we are working with seconds here. So you got to have the tools that are going to be able to capture those moments. We specialize in a segment of the market that has a lot of detail. It's very high glam, very high fashion inspired. So we have to work a lot with capturing details that are very sentimental to the bride, and it's very cultural orientated. So it's big crowds. We're talking about guests that are close to like 1,500 to 1,800 guests at a wedding. So we got to be ready for any kind of moment, and everybody is important in that guest list. So this is basically an example of the type of weddings we photograph, and we need to pay attention to. So as a wedding photographer, there's a few aspects you've got to be looking at and you have to consider. And number one is speed. Just has been fast enough to capture those moments. You got to have gear that has a processing system that will capture those images quick enough. And then at the same time, delivering those images quick enough. I'm going to get into that a little bit later as to how the A9 II helps us to get images. We get it right in camera. So our post-production is not as strenuous and doesn't take up much of our time. So we based our purchases on our Sony gear, mainly on we need to deliver. At the same time, retrieve good quality images, but and also deliver, well, quick enough to our clients. The second point is attention to detail. As I mentioned, our weddings are very high glamour, fashion inspired. So from hair to makeup to dress to the decor to the venue to the guest, everything is big, right? And then everything about a wedding photographer, you need to create an efficient workflow. That is from the time you prep yourself for the wedding to photographing the wedding and then bringing your work home. We all bring edits home, unless we have an editor that you outsource to. But even in that circumstance, you have to create an efficient workflow. And then obviously lightweight, long hours on your feet, carrying gear, carrying a heavy bag around. You have to consider that kind of comfort, which is the weight of your camera. So you are able to move around and also be able to just manage with the gear being on you. So here's a few aspects about the Sony A9 II. We're going to be focusing on a few points later on when it comes to the technical specs of the A9 II. But yes, the ergonomics of the body. You will see from the grip to the buttons, to the layout of the buttons, to the movement, the smooth movement of the buttons, the joystick, even the wheels. It just accommodates you and gives you that comfort level when you are focusing, while looking through the viewfinder. And then at the same time, it contributes to how quickly you take the shot. And then faster autofocus system, paired up with a faster SD card slot. Improved color science is something I love because I learned a lot about photography via my editing. And you just end up training your eye to recognize good color, and especially when you're going to try to maintain skin tone. Dynamic range we're going to be talking about, and a precision viewfinder display. And all of this is coupled together for a more energy efficient system, so your batteries last longer. And we know how that feels when you carrying two big bodies and about how many, 6 to 7 batteries, just would like about 2 chargers just in case. But in this system with the A9 II and the A9, for a 10-hour wedding, we are using like 1.5 batteries of power. So,
Wow.
and you coming home with about 3,000 to 4,000 images. So why are you looking at me?
Wow. That's great.
As you can see, we're a little bit better than that. Anyway.
We just don't shoot properly.
Anyway.
Next slide.
Just to sum it up about the A9 II. And I found this on the internet and I thought it was so apt. But the biggest challenges on the Sony A9 II are targeted towards those who make a living taking photographs and need to deliver large numbers of them quickly. So the main points there, firstly, number one, you're making a living taking photographs. You are taking a lot of them and you need to deliver them quite quickly. And that's exactly how, when you look at the business perspective of wedding a photographer, this has to be your business model. And the only way you can achieve it is choosing the tools now that are going to help you get to this point. So A9 II, guys. Okay. Are we going straight into technical specs of the A9 II?
That's my turn now.
Yeah,
So
Big
hand me the
thumbs
clicker.
to us.
Hand me the clicker there. Thank you. Right. Faster and smarter autofocus system. Like Fatima mentioned earlier, there's a lot of times at the weddings where you need to capture fleeting moments. And when we say fleeting, we mean literally fleeting because you don't always know what's going to happen next. And what we found with the autofocus system on the entire Sony range is you've got nothing to worry about in terms of your focusing. It's one less hassle or one less thing for you to worry about when you are shooting your wedding. I remember when we started shooting weddings, it was a case of, in the back of your mind, you're hoping that your camera is nailing autofocus. And then you're looking at your exposure and you're looking at your framing and you're worrying about your battery life. So with the new Sony mirrorless systems, autofocus is spot on. We've had, I think, an increase of about 90% of the amount of images that we've shot since we've moved to the mirrorless system. And that's a lot. So what it does allow you to do is it allows you, when you're selecting your images as well, because the autofocus is so good, because the camera processes the images so quickly, it allows you to choose which moments you actually want to give your clients. I remember the first time that I shot with the A9. I'm normally the one that shoots down the aisle when the bride walks in. And when I uploaded my images, I could decide which expression I want to give them. It's that good. And it's not a case of spraying and praying. You're still selecting your shots and waiting for your moments. But when the moment is there, you need to be ready. And your kit needs to be ready. And that's exactly what we find with the A9. Oh, well, with the autofocus system, I should say.
We'll go on to the video on eye autofocus. And in this video, basically, it was an environmental portrait at the time of the wedding where they are announcing Mr. and Mrs. And then there was this huge burst of those colored confetti paper falling down. And normally at that part, you're going to be hoping and praying that one of your images focused on the couple and their expression and the way they are so ecstatic about that part of the day. And here with the A9, I had my 55mm on. And because it was more an environmental portrait, as the video zooms in, you will see how in focus the groom and the bride are and how the camera was able to capture that reaction from them. The nice thing about that is that as a wedding photographer, if your end product is the wedding album, you're going to be shooting thinking about the wedding album. So what happens in this circumstance with the environmental portrait and with later on we're gonna touch on resolution of the A9 II, that even if you crop this environmental portrait, you will still get a tack sharp image because your resolution has not been tampered with, or it's not bad. It's on point.
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions because we do have a Sony A7R III as well, which is 42 megapixels. And one of the questions that we keep getting is, what's the difference? Obviously, there's a bit more resolution on the R side with the R series of cameras, but the 24 megapixel sensor of the Sony A9, you are actually not losing out that much. So there's no such thing as there's nothing to worry about on that resolution side.
Yeah. The next one is a moment, a pre-wedding event. As you can see, joyful, a lot of moments you want to capture. And here I want to talk about the focus points on the A9 II sensors. So there's 93% of the sensor is covered focus points. And what happens here is there's two parts. Firstly, you can compose your image in the camera. So you're also thinking about the album layout. And when you're composing your image in camera, that means you got less editing to do. Number two, focus points. So when I say we can control the focus points, you can basically move your focus point to anywhere in the frame where you want it to focus on. So if you look at the top right image, the black and white of the bride, that I wanted depth because she was closest to me. And then you move on to the bottom left, the bottom left image, the black and white. Her cousin was right at the back, and he was having a ball of a time and contributing to so much in that jaw that I had to get him into one of the images. And then the bottom right image is of her and her mom having the time of their lives. So a variety of this adds to that moment, gives more to the client, and at the same time, you just thought about a double page spread in the wedding album.
Yeah, the nice thing about this kit as well, I know we're talking about camera bodies only, but if you pair the cameras with the G Master lenses, for example, there's no fall off in sharpness when it comes to the edge. So you can actually compose, or you can frame your image where you can have your subject closer to the edge without having to worry about losing any sharpness. So it's just an amazing system.
And just based on that, the best part about this is I didn't move. I stayed in one spot and I was able to get, this here is just 4 out of about 20 images.
Yeah, you're lazy.
Ignore the peanut gallery.
That's just a whisper. Don't stress about that, guys. But yeah, this was just 4 images out of 20 that I captured from the setup. And it was a variety, and I allowed the client to have all of them.
So cool.
So another thing about our weddings is all about the detail, and we're going to get into resolution and dynamic range. So this is a recent wedding that we photographed, and as Siraj mentioned, A9 II 24.2 megapixels, more than enough for wedding photographers because the largest we print is like an A3 album. Yeah. If the client even does a A0 canvas, it's more than enough. It's perfect. You will see in the next, yes, this image was the A9 II with the 20 mil. I'm going to get into detail about that part too. At f3.2, we're going to showcase a video now where the video is going to be zooming in. And I know you must be thinking the 20 mil with distortion. Trust me, this was a wedding that I shot 70 to 80% of the wedding with a 20 mil lens. I loved it. But the point here is the resolution of the A9 II. Again, if I do decide in the wedding album design, if I want to crop into that image, I will not be losing detail whatsoever. Okay, into dynamic range. This, I will explain this one quickly. So this was a story, there's a story behind this image. This was a wedding that basically was poorly planned by the wedding, don't look at me, wedding coordinator. It was beyond our control. Unfortunately, the bride wasn't advised as to what time the sun will, where the sun or the position of the sun will be at about, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And unfortunately, this happened where she was getting these sunspots. But so basically, the gazebo that her ceremony was taking place in was under a lot of trees. So that's why we are getting these sunspots. And it was a concern for Siraj and myself because We didn't have time to set up strobes or any lighting to fill in there. And we didn't have space. So we did, and we relied on our gear to give us the following image.
Yeah.
So if we can go back and forth between the two images, you will see
That is ridiculous.
how amazing the dynamic range is.
Yeah. I know I mentioned it before, but one thing to remember about dynamic range, guys, if you increase your ISO, it decreases the dynamic range in your image. So what you need to do is just find that sweet spot and get to know your gear. Once you get to know your gear, you get to know how to use your gear properly, and you'd be confident enough to shoot under conditions like this.
And as I mentioned before, the impeccable color science, which we'll touch on later, but I want to bring it in here. Matt has experience with photographing Indian brides, and sometimes the tone, there's a lot of tones you're playing with. Besides her being with makeup, then you have the groom as well, then the dress, and all of that adds to the white balance and the color tone in that image. And if we just go back to the unedited image, we will find how everything, even the priest, is in shadow, complete shadow, because save the highlights. Here's the secret, guys. Save the highlights.
Expose for your highlights.
Expose for your highlights, and you can recover everything from your shadow. And then we go back to our edited image and just take a look at the priest, and everybody is well exposed.
That's crazy.
And that's without losing color. That's the important bit, because I think in a lot of the older cameras, you could still do that, but your color started degrading.
Yeah. So we have a video of a post-wedding shoot we did in Cape Town on Signal Hill. And it was at a point we were leaving, and the bride got onto a spot that was just lit up slightly with the sun. And I just told her to stop. And it was a gorgeous backdrop of Table Mountain. And I, again, just exposed for my highlights and took it into editing with an easy auto in Lightroom. It picked up so much of shadow. Just take a look at, besides the detail on her, but how the mountain picks up in the background, where you can see a bit of texture, and it actually looks like a painting.
It's amazing.
Awesome. And into, I'm almost done if you guys are watching. Matt's
trying to jump in here.
Matt is being kind enough to give the radio a shot. So now the technical spec that we're just going to touch up is impeccable color science. And this is something I swear by. And I always look for first, because as I said, I learned a lot about photography via my editing. And it was also because our printing lab taught me a lot about if it's not right on your desktop, delete the image, go back to your camera and get it right in camera. And this is exactly what I look for. The industry we are in, as you can see, it's glamorous. It's about the hair, the makeup, and we need to keep the colors close and, well, accurate. At the same time as wedding photographers, and I know, yes, there's other technical parts where you look at the strobe, the lighting, and the color of the light and stuff, and it will add the contrast. But as a wedding photographer, you need to understand that you are not only carrying the style of your photography in that image, you are carrying the makeup artist, the hairstylist, the deco artist, and the designer for the wedding dress. And if you go and portray that image in colors that doesn't show the true color of the garment or of the talent or the makeup, it's going to be a slight problem.
Yeah, guys, just one thing. Fixing it in post should not be on your mind when you're doing when you're photographing anything.
I think drastic cases.
There are instances where you can't get it right in camera.
Yeah.
There are instances, but as far as possible, get it right in camera. People will tell you, but you're shooting in RAW, so it doesn't matter. You need a good base to start with. If your base is not right, there's no ways you can fix that color in post. Now we're just dragging it on because we like to see Matt's face.
So the physical specs of the A9 II is very similar to the A7R4, which Matt is going to be touching on a little later. And moving from the A9 to the A9 II, we have obviously the bigger grip. As you can see, all of the points that we've just made that for us made a difference. And just to bring to everybody's attention, Siraj and myself have always been using Sony since we started
Yeah,
the photography business.
we still have the original A7, so we've actually seen the changes through the different models.
We actually have the Sony DSLRs.
Oh, yeah,
if you
that too.
wanna go that far.
We're flips.
We're not Sony fanboys, but
We antiques. We really precious.
sorry, Matt, what were you saying?
So we're talking like about the crop and sensor A700s and then onto the full frame of the A99. But now when you're looking at the mirrorless range, for me, the grip when it comes to a camera plays a very important part. It helps with the confidence, the way I handle the camera. I'm naturally a shaky person, and I find that if I'm not going to have confidence in the way I hold my gear, I'm going to start doubting myself. So when the A92 was launched, that grip for me sold me. And then on top of that, you research it and you find like things like the algorithms got enhanced and the color signs got enhanced. So it was an extra bonus on top of that.
A lot of features tend to be overlooked by certain people because all they look at is cosmetics in terms of, oh, it's slightly bigger, it's got the same sensor. But what Sony does is there's a lot of technology that goes in the background. For example, the A92 has got a totally different processor compared to the A9, which is a major step up. So I'm not going to go into technical details, but it's things that should be considered.
Yeah.
And just to let you guys know, the Black Friday deals on Sony gear is massive. It's so aggressive. There's savings up to 12,500 Rand. So if you want a piece of that, just check it out with your retailer. You can see all the deals there. And then I also want to let you guys know we are covering Q&A here. So please drop your questions in here. Actually, I'm going to go to some questions before we get to that fun stuff, so that we can pay attention to the people here a little bit. So we've got a lot of comments coming in here about the high ISO and wow, the images are amazing. And I'm not sure which images they refer to.
TTL.
You got it.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
So,
Check the timestamps.
do you scout the wedding venue beforehand to decide on the locations that you'll take photos on? Or is it something that you do?
Just get on us nodding. We
Yes.
all are nodding.
That's
yes.
a big yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Big yes.
You have
It's-
to.
I will always scout if I haven't been to the venue before, if I haven't shot there once or twice. If I've shot there regularly, then I won't because I know the venue like the back of my hand. So
One bit of advice as well is we always try and go to the venue at the same time as the wedding would be happening, just to see what the lighting conditions are, for example.
time of the year.
Yeah.
So, it's those small things that actually help again with your workflow because you know what to prepare for.
The other thing as well is that's also underestimated is that kind of experience trains your eye. So when you are entering into a venue knowing what it's going to look like, you're automatically saying in your head, I know which lens I'm going to use. I know what setting I'm going to use.
Absolutely.
What ISO I'm going to shoot at. I got my strobes just in case. I got my flashes. So this basically trains you and helps you to build towards that point where you don't need to stress about how the lighting is going to be.
The less that you have to think about on the day,
exactly.
the better. Like get all the planning out of the way. I mean, you would do it for any
100%.
other type of shoot as well. Definitely do it for weddings.
Yeah.
And the thing there as well is just keep at it because the more you shoot, the more experience you gain, the more your eye learns to see things.
100%.
And then we actually have a question here that's directed to you, Matt. Has your workflow changed ever since you've joined the Sony squad?
100,000%. Like my overall yield for images has increased like I cannot believe. Like I can't even understand, like overstate it. You guys were saying how, what did you say, 90% of your images you can choose from because there's so many that are perfect.
Yeah.
The autofocus is a huge one for me, but like I was so worried about getting the shots sharp with my previous camera system disaster.
I can't hear that.
Yeah. That I was genuinely terrified. I would always have to shoot everything at like f4, f5,
Yes.
sometimes 6.3 even, just to get stuff sharp. But with the Sony stuff, the IAF, literally every shot I want hits the eye I want.
Yep.
And one thing we haven't mentioned is you can actually program faces into the camera. So one thing I always do on every wedding is I go to face registration It's in the menus. You can go face reservation. I'll take a photo of the bride, not smiling and smiling. So I have two different faces of her. So the camera will always find her face first. It'll prioritize her face with the autofocus, which is just ridiculous as a concept, but that's a thing. And then the groom, obviously, he comes.
He's there as well.
He's not that important.
He's there as well.
But what I'm trying to say is, like, it's just being able to get all my images sharp off the bat, using a mirrorless camera as well, which is something I was genuinely quite worried about. I'm able to expose perfectly with every shot I do. I don't have to worry about test shots. I don't take test shots ever anymore unless I'm using flash. Like, that's the only time I take test shots. So it's just sped up my workflow. Like, I can't even believe it. It's been huge.
Also, just to add on to that, it makes photography easier. Some people, I've had discussion with some people say, but it's become too easy. It's not become too easy. You need to know what you're doing. But now you are able to concentrate on your framing without having to worry about autofocus.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because if you are jumping between, I need to get my frame, I hope my autofocus is on, spot on, I don't like the colors.
Yeah.
All of those things you don't have to worry about anymore. And so it just speeds up the way you work, and you eventually get the images that you want.
Just stop thinking.
I think you can pay more attention to the creative style of
100%, yeah.
So you can already compose everything in your camera, and you just get fancy after.
I like to use it as a method for me to disconnect from the technical side and just connect with the client.
Yes.
Because with weddings, it's so much about making someone feel comfortable.
Personal.
Exactly.
So personal.
Yes, it's very
I love to just not have to worry about, am I getting the exposure right? I know it's right. Like, it's there. And if you want to get super hectic, you can just chuck the zebras on. If you really want to get like perfect exposure and never have to edit an image.
Just so that you know he's dropping technical terms, I'm very impressed.
I'm surprised he knows what zebras are.
It's not those animals, it's something in camera.
The funniest thing.
It's a nice point you brought up about the confidence level of our clients in front of the camera, because it does make them very conscious that someone's watching me, and then activating silent mode and just playing with the screen and just walking around. She thinks you're not clicking, but you were just playing around clicking.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
And the autofocus helps with all of that. So you're not doubting your images. I guess it's also gone to that point where we're excited to get home to look at the images because we know what we just got, and we want to start editing them.
It's just a better system.
As compared to
anything.
Other systems.
Next question.
I mean, really, anything.
Next question.
Now, it is incredible to see how mirrorless actually evolved the creative process for
100%.
photographers. I mean, the fact that you don't have to look at white balance and your exposure and everything else, and drop your camera. It's everything's just happening in there.
You know, the nice thing is, you look at body and lens as a system, and you look at what Sony's doing in terms of developing it, where the lenses are able to keep up with the autofocus of the A9 II. So you can slap that lens on any camera and you'll know that the autofocus is spot on. It'll keep up with whatever the camera throws at it. It's just, it's genius if you think about it.
There we go. So A704, the R, I don't know if this is exactly what Sony intended, but R stands for resolution. So I'm assuming that's what it was for. 61 megapixels. You would think that, like, when I first heard that, I was like, that's overkill. But when I saw the files, when I saw what comes into the actual, into the computer, you can see how much information is there. You can do so much with that space. It's ridiculous. Same, well, actually way better, excellent autofocus with the eye autofocus as well. The dynamic range of this camera is absolutely absurd, specifically at 100 ISO. I've got a video I want to show you guys. That we shot on Alpha Universe. I'll show later. It's fine.
Okay.
We were on an Alpha festival. It's like absolutely ridiculous video. So the dynamic range is insane with this camera as well. Like I mentioned, high resolution sensor. The image quality is just superb. I've never seen anything like it. And I've got some portraits as well to show you guys. And it has the same improved ergonomics as the A9 II. I didn't know that this is something that I wanted until I got it. It's one of those types of things where you don't really realize that you're missing it. But that bigger grip is so nice, and the buttons just click better. I know it sounds like such a silly thing, the clickable buttons, and but I mean, it is. It really makes a big difference. So it is nice to have that. It's for portrait photographers and wedding photographers. it's kind of for people who like perfection. If you really, really want to pixel peep and really want to make sure you get the most out of your shots. I also like to say it's very good for versatility because of a crop mode, which I'll talk about in a second. Go to the next slide there. So this is just a shot. It's also very good in low light. This isn't a high ISO. Sorry, it isn't a high ISO shot. So it's 500 ISO. But what I wanted to, this is just a simple flash shot. But what I wanted to kind of get at is that this is shot in pretty much darkness. So it's just as good at focusing in low light, which is hugely important on weddings. Like that's so important to have good focusing performance in low light. Next slide there is just a portrait we shot on a wedding workshop I actually did with Harriman a while back. 1.8, I was typically terrified to shoot a 1.8. I'm like, let me send it. 1.8 shots, eye autofocus perfectly on her eye, and I could just trust that the camera got it right. I just want to show you guys that dynamic range video. It's just an example. We did an Alpha Fest. Hopefully we can get back to normal light sometime soon, and we can do another Alpha Fest. This was from an Alpha Fest. This was just a scene that we did, and it went. This is the flash didn't fire here. And all I'm doing in Lightroom is just taking the slider from what is it on?
I can't see, it's so small.
0. It was on like 0, and I just push it all the way up to like +5.
Yeah.
Like you can just see, the flash didn't fire, and I was still able to recover the shot. That black image you see is exactly what the camera sees without the flash. We were shooting specifically with flash. So to be able to get that is just mind-blowing. That much dynamic range in the shot. I think I shot it at 100 ISO. I'm not sure if you can see it there, 100 ISO. And I was just able to get 5 stops of dynamic range. I could could have got some more out of it. And I could even use that shot. I just think that's absolutely crazy. Next shot for me. The next slide is a straight out of camera, unedited shot of a bride. And this is where I kind of wanted to talk about the color science of these cameras, the A7R4. Anyone who says that Sony has bad color science is absolutely insane. This is straight out of camera. I think I actually shot this with auto white balance as well. I was just winging it on the shoot. And it's completely unedited at 1.8. It's insane how good this camera is at its color science. This shot here, also on that same workshop. Now, when I'm typically shooting a wedding, I'll shoot with the A7R4 with a 35mm lens on. I love that lens. This is a 35mm shot you're looking at right now. And the next shot is actually the same 35mm lens, but I've just I've programmed the camera to crop into the Super 35 mode of the camera. Just when you press the down arrow on my D-pad on my Sony, it just crops into 35mm Super 35mm mode. So this is effectively like 50 to 60 mil, I think, ish.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm able to get technically 2 different lenses with 1 prime.
Gorgeous.
So I have a 35mm prime and I have a 50-something mil prime 1.8 on my camera. That is something I never thought that I could really get. And I mean, that's still a 45 megapixel or 40-something megapixel image. So I could still crop into that if I want, which is insane. So you have so much flexibility, and that's what I'm saying. It's so versatile. This camera is so versatile, and I absolutely love it. We're gonna just play a video here. I went away on holiday recently, and I don't do this normally, but this is just a time lapse. You can just play it in the what's it called, the rewind mode. Yeah. This is just a time lapse of a thunderstorm I captured in the Drakensberg. Quite a lot of, there were about, I'd say 400 different images here. I really enjoyed making this. I don't ever do this kind of stuff, but the camera is so good at landscape as well. I mean, it's not something that we're talking about now, but as a landscape camera, it's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to go to the next slide, which was just a composite of all of those shots. I think it was all of those shots, or maybe I did about 20 different shots to make this. So I just let the camera run in a time-lapse mode, and I got, I think, about 20 different lightning bolts, and I composited them all together. Such a simple shot, but what you don't really see there is that shot can be printed like literally the size of the wall behind us. Like it can be printed so big for a client, and I could sell that to a company, or anyone who wants to buy that can get that printed as big as they want. So that's really cool. It's just it's flexible, it's versatile, and I love bringing this camera with me everywhere I go. It's amazing for portraits. Sure. I did a portrait shoot recently with a friend of mine. This is just in my studio in Cape Town, and I just love how this camera produces color. It's so flexible with the color as well. So I actually did quite a bit of adjustment to his shirt here. I increased specifically the yellow hue, and I darkened the blue hue as well, just to get that tone to complement the background as well, which was like more of a beige look. So I spent a bit of time on this image, but it's such a simple process, because I can trust that I can get the shot on, in studio, and I can do whatever I want to the shot afterwards in post. Next two shots on the same shoot. It was actually crazy. We did 4 different looks in an hour, with maybe 100 different images altogether. I can't believe how beautiful this camera's color is. The skin tones here are his exact skin tones. I didn't have to worry about white balance. I set the white balance to 5600. I shot, and I didn't touch the white balance afterwards. So it's just like you're getting the best out of the camera, no matter what. This is actually one of the first images I shot with the A7R4. This was on the launch. The launch, yeah. This was in the very beginning of the launch. And the original image, which I didn't put it in. But the original image is very, very different. And I had the vision for this kind of shoot to make it look quite dystopian and quite non-realistic, specifically. So the sky was darkened to this very dark, kind of dingy blue. And all of those flowers in the shot are actually pink. They're actually pink in real life, so they're not purple flowers. But I was able to just adjust that hue for that, and know that I could get that right. And the reason I did that was because the theme was for her makeup was purple. The other model also had purple makeup, so I really wanted to kind of like complement the shot with that specific adjustment. But I knew that with that camera I could do that. It's really, really awesome. All that grass was green as well. Just so much was done to those shots.
I just want to butt in, if we can go on wide. Just on that same shot, was it a shot that you thought about in advance? Like you knew what you were going to do in editing, post-production? Now that's the amazing thing about the gear, is that you standing there and observing the surrounding and the situation, and you're already planning your editing process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you're confident that you're going to
get the shot, and how you're going to go about editing it.
That's exactly it. And I mean, with that shot, it was the windiest day I think we've ever had in Cape Town. We had a softbox just off to the right of this model, and I actually know we probably didn't need it.
Yeah.
If I really wanted to get hectic with the adjustments and to go in really, really close and do some dodging and burning, I could have probably got away with not using the softbox just because of the dynamic range. Having shot with this camera for a year or so now, actually I saw on my Facebook that was a year ago, just like 2 days ago or something. So having this camera for a year, I know that I could probably just not have to use flash, just get that same kind of shot, just because of the dynamic range, which is crazy. Cool. You guys going to chat about your
favorite setup?
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, question. Herman is also in the room.
2 questions.
Okay. So
Herman, just move the hat.
Sorry?
Show them the hat again.
Showcase the hat.
There we go.
Yeah, I can't do the tricks. Damn it. Black Friday deals. There's like savings up to 12,500 Rand. So take advantage of them. Get to your retailer. Check out what they have. It's huge. And then Q&A. Let's quickly get to that. First, I'm going to ask a question, actually. Let's get to my question. If these deals were available when you started out, what would you take advantage of?
I love this question.
Go for it.
So, when I started out, I was broke and poor. So, I would have loved this. I would have absolutely loved this. I mean, we all were. I mean, let's be real. Like,
yes.
And I would have absolutely loved these deals when I was starting out. And if I could have chosen a combination when I was starting, I would have probably I would go for the A7 III, just because it's a really, really, really good price point, especially now with the Black Friday deal. And I would say, I would probably say the 35mm 1.8 to start off with, because I love that lens. It's really, really lightweight, and that whole setup you could keep for a very long time. Like you can actually keep that for the next 5 years and still have really good images with that and good video with that.
That's a very good point, because when it came to purchasing gear and equipment, we always based it on it needs to last us for the next
100%.
15 to 20 years. And
100%.
if we had today's deals, this month's deals, when we started off, we wouldn't have been chopping and changing between second-hand gear.
Yeah, totally.
And just invested in.
Just to add on to what Matt has said, though, that A7 III is not a brand new camera, but it's still rated one of the best hybrid cameras ever. And if you look at the history of that camera, it took the world by storm. I mean, there was a shortage.
Yeah,
The
no,
demand
there
was
was a huge shortage.
Yeah.
If you go onto YouTube and you just type in A7 III, you'll find a lot of videos there saying A7 III is the best camera ever made. I swear to you,
Yep.
I'm not even exaggerating. I said it when it came out. I couldn't believe that they put that camera at the price point that they did. I thought Sony was crazy for that, but it was just such a good deal at the time, and I still believe, even I think 2 years later, three, it's still a very, very good deal, especially now with the Black Friday deals.
But it shows you what Sony does as well, because Sony touted that camera as entry level.
Basic model.
Yes.
Like what?
That's the
Exactly.
amazing
Like I
part.
cannot believe that.
Just when at the workshops, when you get the questions, what's the best entry level for Sony? And we're like,
Yeah.
A7 III.
I get these. I got a couple messages a while back, people DMing me on Instagram asking, should I buy the A7 II now? And I'm like,
You're just stepping back.
rather just get the A7 III,
Definitely.
because it's going to last you for 5 years. The A7 II, you'll kick yourself.
That
You know,
A7 III was
A7
such
III
a
is
big
beast.
jump.
It's still a beast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a big jump from the A7 II. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We have had
Yeah,
the
we've got
A7
the
II,
A7
so we
II.
know the difference
Yeah.
from the A7 II to the 3 and now to the A9.
And the A7 II is not a bad camera. I mean, it's still a very, very good camera, but the jump from
The jump
the
is
2
so
to 3
big.
is
That's the
massive.
thing. It's just so big.
I think we would have stuck to our A9 and my 55mm. Love my 55mm. But now that I've experienced the 20mm, do we need to pay school fees next year?
That's a good question. We've got 3 daughters. If one graduates, we're happy. You know what I'm saying?
It's an achievement.
I think
I hope they're not watching.
if I had these,
Girls, please ignore everything your dad just said.
we are good parents. We are good parents.
They'd actually go for it. I'm sure they'd go for it. They'd say, use the money.
Exactly.
Wow.
I think if I had these deals, I would go for the 24mm f1.4 with the A7R4, purely because of that Super 35. That firstly, that lens is absolutely amazing. So I like shooting wide. So if I crop in on the 24mm, it takes it up to about a 35mm, which I'm happy with. So that would be my go-to
Good
setup.
option as well.
That's awesome. So we actually have another question. It's directed towards TTL. So TTL, you mentioned 1,000 people at a wedding.
Yeah, it's wild.
Wow. What is the normal number of pictures that you typically take at such a wedding?
About 300?
Okay, just to put you guys into the scenario.
That's a lot. Huh?
When you're looking at the number of guests, we're not saying that every single guest gets an image. It's a case of just working around those guests that are closest and sentimental to the bride, and that's all part of your planning when you speak to the bride and have the meeting with her. But when I said our segment is a very community based, even the taxi guy will get invited for the wedding, and
there's
everybody
comes
is
in.
invited for the
Yeah.
wedding. So that's why the numbers are big. On average, it depends on the number of hours. Okay, so 2 things. It depends on the number of hours that we are shooting for, and it depends how much of activity is taking place within those hours. So a typical 8 hour event, anything between, let's say 400 to 600 images. But if the event has a lot going on, like there's always a special feature or something down the aisle, there's something different than the normal, and then we're looking at anything between 600 to 800.
Yeah, those are images delivered.
Okay.
Those are not
Those
images
are-
taken.
No, not taken.
Not
It's
there's no way.
delivered to
Yeah.
the client.
Did he ask about taken or delivered?
No, taken.
Taken.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
taken.
taken is different.
Oh,
Taken is different.
taken.
It depends. You have to remember, it depends on the activity that happens at the wedding. If we're shooting pre-wedding functions, for example, where
There's a lot of entertainment.
There's
Yeah.
dancing.
There's a lot of entertainment.
So it just varies.
But on that note, this is another point we like to bring up where over the years, experience in weddings, irrespective of the hours that you shoot in, you become familiar of what's important to capture. So it's not a case of you this shooting one after the other because you're doubting yourself, oh, maybe that's important and maybe that is important. With your planning, you will learn that as you plan, you will know exactly who's going to be important, which part of the weddings are important, and what is important, details and
Absolutely.
stuff. And you find that over the years, from 5,000 images, you're scaling down to like 2,000, 1,000 images because you know exactly what needs to be captured. And the bride is more than happy because 7, 10 years down the line, you are trusted, you are experienced because you gave yourself that opportunity to go through all of that stuff. So our first wedding 9 years ago, we came home with 5,000 images.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So
And that
now-
was purely because
Yeah.
we just did, we captured everything.
now when it comes to like an 8-hour event, you're looking at anything between 2.5 to 3.5 images. 1,000 images. Sorry, 1,000 images. Yeah.
And then a very cool question. I'll put it up also here. Do you guys have YouTube channels?
We should actually start that.
So I actually, yes, I do actually, but I'm lazy and I haven't posted to it for way too long. And then I'll post something. I'm like, this wasn't good. I'm just gonna archive it. But I'm gonna post a lot. I'm actually posting a lot. I've actually got a note on my phone. It's like 5 videos I'm gonna
I
record
would
this month.
actually like to ask
for
the
YouTube.
person a question. What would you like to see in those YouTube videos from us besides?
Besides like dancing and like,
Our faces.
And jokes.
We do have a channel as well, but I'm just
same
gonna
story.
exactly the same story.
Yeah.
So Matt, what is your YouTube channel? Because I'm going to throw it up here for him.
My handle everywhere is the Matt Masson. Everywhere.
The Matt, not just Matt.
No, because Matt Masson was taken. Some idiot took it. Anyway, the Matt Masson everywhere. Everywhere.
So Kesnik, I've actually put it down for you right there so that you can see it. Okay, cool. We're gonna go back into your presentation.
Oh, our turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our favorite wedding setup when it comes to particularly our gear, for me, as I said, the A92 with the 35mm Zeiss, and Siraz loves his
1635 with the A9 Mark 1.
My favorite setup is I like to shoot with 2 bodies when I'm shooting the A7 III 85mm and the A7R4 with a 35mm. So essentially I have 3 lenses. It's the 35 and roughly 50-ish because of that crop mode that I mentioned with the A7R4, and then the 85mm with the A7 III as well. It's a really nice setup. Obviously I will change throughout the day if I'm shooting a wedding, but it's just such a good go-to setup. You know, for a standard wedding, 35, 85 is that stock standard kind of combination. But I feel like I have a bit of an advantage because I do have that extra kind of crop in that down button that I've programmed to go into that Super 35 mode. So yeah, that's my favorite setup. I really, really love it. I actually like the A7 III at night because it has a smaller sensor. The ISO performance at very high ISO is slightly better than the A7R4, just because of how sensor sizes work. The bigger megapixels, the more noise you'll get. Not to say that the A7R4 has bad noise performance at high ISO, but the A7 III is just kind of like you can just do whatever you want. You really don't have to even try. So with an 85mm, it makes it amazing for capturing sneaky shots like
I'm not telling you.
like guests chatting and laughing and enjoying themselves, the speeches, the couple enjoying themselves from the other side of the room, and I think that 85 is just awesome. It's like 1.4, so you can just get shoot in the dark basically.
It's also a beautiful portrait lens.
100%. Yeah, I mean obviously, yeah. I don't know why I didn't say that, but I mean I typically like to shoot my portraits a little bit wider, like 35, but it is nice to just switch across to an 85 more shots just to get a couple shots. But my style is more wide. 35mm is like my favorite focal length. What do we have next?
So just to refresh your memories, if you haven't heard this yet, the Black Friday deals are ridiculously aggressive. I mean, there's savings up to 12,500 Rand on G Master glass and bodies. It's really massive. The only two cameras that are not currently on the Black Friday is the A7C because it's already on promotion. You get a free 50mm if you pre-order, and then the A7S III because it's a new model. So that's pretty much it. Even the 12 to 24 f2.8 is on this deal. That's actually the big boy. That's the one that's 12,500 Rand, up to 12,500 Rand rather. Okay.
Wow.
Now we're going to go into some questions. Let me go to this one. If you could take only one body and only one lens to a wedding, what would it be? That's interesting.
A9 II and 20mm.
That was
G
fast.
series. Definitely.
A7R4 and a 16 to 300 f2.8. No.
That's the next lens Sony is apparently releasing.
It's a very tricky question because it just depends on the type of wedding I'm shooting. I would if it's a hectic client and you know that they're going to be a bit difficult to work with, I would say A7R4 and 2470. But if I know that I can just be wild and just do what I want, I'd just say
Do you want to be away from them for the 70 to
2470.
Oh,
2470.
okay.
7200 because of COVID, but 2470.
Try the
And
400mm lens. That's a COVID lens.
Yeah. if it's a fun client and I know that I can get away with some weird stuff, I'd say 35mm f7R4.
I would go with the R4 with a 1635 because you'd still be able to crop them all.
These guys love wides. You guys are wild. Wow.
Okay, and then we have one more question here from Alton Oliver. Which memory cards are the best but cheap?
Oh.
I'm not answering
Silence.
this.
Silence.
There's none.
Silence.
I don't think there are any.
Again, you can compare memory cards to lenses. You get what you pay for, unfortunately.
Yes.
So there's certain things you don't skimp on. If you buy cheap
memory's
memory
big one.
cards,
Yes.
if you are shooting for yourself as a hobbyist, then get whatever cards you want.
That doesn't matter.
But if you are getting paid to shoot, rather go for the most expensive cards that you can afford.
The Sony Tough cards are like
The best.
Yeah.
the best, and you can literally run them through mud
Exactly.
and they will be fine.
Just-
like that's what you need if you're shooting proper weddings.
Just remember, anything towards your business is an investment. So don't look at it as being an expense. Spend the money and you're not going to be seeing yourself buying for the next couple of years until Sony launches something brand new and then we...
And you don't want
Cards
to
lost.
Yeah.
Cards lost.
You don't want to be in a situation where you are shooting and you are hoping that your card doesn't.
Oh,
look
yes.
That is the worst thing.
Worst thing ever.
It's the
So rather not look at the lower end of the card market. Get something good.
Get something that can write quickly to the actual card. Otherwise, your buffer's going to fill up and then stop you from shooting. Like I've had that happen before. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, think long term, guys. Think
It's a
long-term.
proper nightmare. It's like, yeah.
We have a very sweet question/statement for Matt from Amy.
Oh no.
Oh,
Matt,
Miss
back
Amy.
yourself against TTL. Your shots are absolutely beautiful. They're just jealous.
Right, so there's just a lot of bias in that statement, and I'm not sure I can really hold that as a very trustworthy statement. But I'm better, and I know that, so that's fine.
Oh no, sorry. Is that what you
I can see something happening.
And that's it, guys.
I can see something happening. We allow Matt to say what he wants to say.
Oh, shame.
We allow him to say what he wants to say because we're very passive people and we're very nice people. So.
And then for those of you that have missed this week, we've covered G Master lenses, we've covered wildlife, we've covered vlogging, now weddings. There's a lot of stuff that we've shared now. So if you want, these will be available for the rest of the month. Also, obviously now there will be kind of pre-recorded sessions and no longer live, but they will be available again to you. If you don't know, the Alpha Universe is full of content. There's always new workshops, new content going up on the Alpha Universe. That's alphauniverse-mea.com. There's a lot of wealth. There's a lot of info and tutorials and just knowledge and sometimes even just entertainment going up there, and it's completely free. So take advantage of it. This is not stuff that's going to YouTube. This is stuff specifically for Sony and for the Alpha universe, and it's available to you to use. And then lastly, this was our very last session of the Black Friday live streams. So thank you so much for tuning in. Why are you whispering something in his ear? I can't hear it.
We just want to congratulate you. This
Yes.
You need to put the camera back on us.
week.
I'm gonna put it back to them.
Thank you.
So Herman has put in a lot of work this week to make all these streams happen. So congrats and
Congrats, Alon.
Thank you.
Really
We'd
well
like to
done.
thank
play the sound. Yeah,
this whole week has been Herman's. I think this has been the best week in your life. So we'd like to thank Herman on a public platform for everything that he's done this
Yes.
week, and not only this week,
Thank you.
but everything else that he's always done for us. He's
Especially
really is
for
an amazing
Sony,
person,
most
especially for
importantly.
Sony.
Yes.
And we do love Matt.
Yeah,
We do love
we
Matt.
do.
Yeah.
We'll sort him out.
Thank you so much for tuning in, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. These will be available. Stay tuned for them and enjoy your weekend. I know that everybody's probably like super hungry now. So go enjoy your meal. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Take care.